The Hamas spokesman states the reason for attack on Israel, and the reason goes back 2,000 years, as if that's completely normal, and it's about cows, red cows, holy cows. Yes, we're going to break it all down right now. I'm Joshua, and this is the Israel Guys. Welcome back to the Israel Guys, where we believe in a world of anti-Israel propaganda. You should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Guys, go ahead and subscribe. And follow us on all the social media platforms. We're out there all over the place. Go ahead and get connected. We're bringing you content. I don't think anybody else is getting content like what we've got from the ground right here. So connect to the truth of what's actually happening here. We're going back 2,500 years. 2,000 to 2,500 years ago, because Hamas did. Now, most people are thinking, wait, why is a reason for the war go back 2,000 to 2,500 years? And a spat that is actually showing up. And I'm going to play you the clip where the Hamas spokesperson in Gaza literally states the reason for the Al-Aqsa flood war, which we'll talk about that as well, literally goes back to the Jewish practice of the red heifers. And because Israel now has red heifers, that's actually a part of their reason for attacking. Now that is a little bit mind-blowing to a Western godless kind of world, to realize the Hamas terror entity is very religious and is very worried about Israel coming back to their land as was promised by God. Now, since we're talking about this, and because Hamas is getting so religious, we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper to understand why they're being so religious about something the rest of the world has no clue about. Like, so what? Israel brought some cows over to Israel, and you're going to have a war with them because they brought a couple red little cows to Israel. Like, literally, that's what the Western world looks at this through the lens of, you can have cows, it's okay. Not Hamas. The Hamas entity literally is full-fledged into war, and the cows actually have a lot to do with it, which is insane. But let's look at this. There's some ancient Jewish writing, and I'll tell you what it is in a minute, but let's just look at it like that. There's this guy, Sanballat. Let's read it right out. He says, when Sanballat heard that they were building the wall, and he was furious and very indignant and mocked the Jews. This goes all the way back 2,500 years ago, between the spat between Jews and Arabs back then. Okay, and he spoke before the brethren and the army of Samaria, where I'm actually sitting right now, and said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Literally, that's what he says all the way back 2,500 years ago. And today, the Hamas spokesperson is literally saying exactly the same thing. Here we are. Same folks, same kind of situation, worried about Jews coming back and building in their ancient homeland, and specifically that they're going to sacrifice to God is their big, big worry. We're going to take a look at this clip real quick. Here we go. Let's take it.
عدوان بلغ أقصى مداه على مصرانا وأقصانا وبدأ تقسيمه الزماني والمكاني فعلا وأحضرت البقرات الحمر تطبيقا لخرافة دينية مقيتة مصممة للعدوان على مشاعر أمة كاملة في قلب عروبتها ومسرى نبيها ومعراجه إلى السماء.
All right, that was Abu Obaida, the Hamas spokesperson. Now, literally, this doesn't make any sense, but what he just said, you just saw it on the screen. The reason for this war was the bringing in of the red cows, as he said. Like, literally, guys, I'm telling you, this was his 100-day speech to the Arab world that is supporting him. He has to give the best rallying speech to his troops about why their war on Israel is significant and encourage them. And guys, this is mentioned within the first 2 minutes of his speech to the soldiers, being one of the number one reasons why the Hamas spokesperson believes that their war on Israel is legitimate and just and should happen. And the way they're doing it, he, as their spokesman, believes that it should be done this way. And his argument is that Israel deserves this because they brought red cows. And this is detestable, as you saw on the screen earlier. It's a religious myth. of the Jews. That's also quoted in his speech. He says it's designed for aggression against the feelings of an entire nation in the heart of the Arab identity. So literally, he's going back to a spiritual, religious spat, saying Jews and their God and their religion is what we're actually fighting. All of that together, we have to annihilate that because we're superior, our religion's superior, and we're fighting the religious aspects of Israel as the top. That's what we really have to fight. And the Red Heifers are his number one hit again. Why that would be in the speech is baffling to Western thought and Western politicians. They're not even going to see that. They're not going to understand. He said something about cows. Makes no sense to Westerners, but literally you have to understand the religious background to the situation here in the Middle East to understand what's actually going down. Again, we're going back to that, and that's Nehemiah, where we're taking this, literally the Arab war against the Jews that returned at the time of Nehemiah from the dispersion. They're coming back and they're reestablishing presence back in the Jewish land, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and they're getting pushed back by who? By Arabs here in this area. I'll read another little quote from this. This is now it happened when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were being restored and that the gaps were beginning to be closed, that they became very angry, and all of them conspired together to come and attack Jerusalem and create confusion. Now, literally, this is what happened on October 7th. Conspired based on. Now, guys, you got to understand, they call this the Al-Aqsa flood. The war that they're fighting against Israel is so spiritual. It's such about the red heifers, that's temple sacrifice, Jewish religious worship to God, and the Temple Mount where the temple stood. This is what they're fighting. That's what they call this war. No wonder the calves and the red heifers are the big thing that they're fighting against, because they're seeing and feeling that Israel's moving into a more holy, righteous time in world history. Jews are coming back like crazy to the land of Israel. And they sense the Jewish people, if they truly connect to God, again, like they did in days of old, that they're in big trouble because they know the book and they know the story. The historic outline is when the Jewish people come back to the land of Israel and they connect again with the God of Israel, they don't fare very well. When God begins to fight for the people of Israel, it's really bad news for these anti-God people, and that's why they're fighting against the godliness of this nation. So literally, they're fighting against the red heifers and the Temple Mount, calling it the Al-Aqsa flood, just like in the back old days. They were fighting the fact that Jews were trying to build the walls around Jerusalem, just like the ancient writings talk about. Hey guys, we'll be right back. But first, you know, one of the best ways to support Israel right now during this war is to buy products from Israeli businesses. Our friends at Blessed by Israel ship the beautiful products of small businesses and families from Israel's heartland to people all over the world. You can buy the wonderful taste, smells, and goodness of the promised land of Israel at Blessed by Israel. They ship directly straight to your doorstep. Check out the extra virgin olive oil, savory spices, cosmetics, hand creams, soaps, lotions, chocolates, coffee, and much, much more. The best part about this is that at the same time as you enjoy the goodness of the land of Israel, you can also invest in the faithful pioneers who are restoring and rebuilding Judea and Samaria. That's right. Your purchases are an effective way to contribute to the strengthening of Israel. So head over to Blessed by Israel, that's BUYIsrael.com, to buy the wonderful products of Israel's heartland and support the pioneers of Judea and Samaria. Again, that's Blessed by Israel, BUY Israel. Link is in the description below. I want to play this clip real quick. If you don't believe me about the Al-Aqsa flood, we're playing this clip where they actually call it the Al-Aqsa typhoon, the translator, but literally they're calling it the Al-Aqsa flood. Listen here.
All right, now a spokesman for the Al-Qassam Brigade, that's the military wing of Hamas, is making a statement. Let's listen in.
Our fighters will continue to shell the strongholds of the enemy, covered by artillery and missile barrage, the last of which was targeting Sderot, where enemy positions in the usurped lands were targeted with 100 missiles only on Sderot. under the Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation, we call on our fellow Palestinians to engage in the affair. This will be recorded by golden letters in history. It is our journey as martyrs, and we will be rewarded with victory.
So now, the Al-Aqsa flood, Al-Aqsa typhoon, this Arab war against Israel's religious awakening that's happening. The reason why there's red heifers to start with is because there's enough Jewish people in the land of Israel that believe that the temple service and the sacrifice and all those things could come back. So this is what this dramatic, anti-God and all of that, Hamas is fighting that. They're not fighting a democratic state of Israel, a Western worldview that everybody... No, they're fighting a very religious war here. Now, continue with the ancient writings. I'm just parallel because you've got to go back 2,500 years to get in the mindset of what's actually going on in these guys right now. They're fighting a holy war. So we're going to have to go back to that time to see, out of a modern context, like we're in a modern age, guys. Religion, God, all that has tried to be extracted out. But these guys are not operating in that extracted world. They're operating in a very spiritual, like fighting against God and the Jewish people, and their connection to God is their whole intent. So back to Nehemiah, it says, we made prayer to our God, the Jewish people, and because of them, we set watch against them day and night. So they prayed and set up watch. What is Israel doing right now? Literally, that's what Israel is doing right now. Every community across Israel has a thing called the Kitat Konanut, the first response team. Not every community had this engaged on October 7th. Today, every community across Israel has a first response team that is in action. Every single one of them. So they literally did this. They prayed and they put defenses in every single one of their communities, and they're all activated right now, and they're all on their toes. And I want you don't believe that, well, just watch this. They're praying and they're on the front line. Check this video out. It's extremely inspiring. It's these fighters of Israel praying before actually going into the front line in Gaza. Check it out.
נלחמים בשם השם! כמו ישראל! כמו ישראל! אדוני אלינו! אדוני אלינו! אדוני אחד! כמו ישראל! אדוני אלינו! אדוני אלינו! אדוני אחד! אדוני אחד! אדוני מלך! אדוני מלך! אדוני נופל לבית! אדוני מלך! אדוני מלך! אדוני נופל לבית!
All right, again, so parallels between the old story and the new story. Guys, they're praying, they're setting up watch. And then to go on with the old story, it says, our adversary said, they will neither know nor see anything till we come into their midst and kill them and cause the work to cease. Literally, that's called terrorism, sneaking in at an unknown time to cause devastation, destruction, to kill them. That was the same old 2,500-year-old plan of the Arabs then fighting Jews as it is today. The tactics have not changed. Literally, they're doing the same thing. It's called terrorism, and it happens today just like it did 2,500 years ago. Israel is still fighting that war. This is the same story. You just have to understand what's actually going on. It's called terrorism. It's the same old battle. All right, we're jumping in again to the old story. Nehemiah, the return of the Jewish people back then. Literally, it's the same story as what happened today. The Jewish people come back. Same struggles, same war over establishing Jewish presence here in the land of Israel. Let's go back to the old story. So it was when the Jews who dwelt near them came, and they told us 10 times. And they told them this: from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. That terror. The Jewish people understood that they were in a very intense time, that the Arabs surrounding them were engaged in war, just like today, and that any moment they could strike, right? We'll continue. Therefore, Nehemiah is in charge here. He says, therefore, I positioned men behind the lower parts of the wall at the openings, and I set the people according to their families with their swords, their spears, and their bows. Literally, that's what has happened again with the first response teams. Again, in every single community have done exactly the same thing that the Jews 2,500 years ago did when they came reestablishing their presence after being kicked out. Not saying this is the first time. They were kicked out, they came back. They were kicked out, they came back. And so what we're witnessing today is the comeback of the ancient Jewish people to their promised land, Israel. And it's the same story once again. Going back to the old story again, here it happens. It happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall, everyone to his work. And it continues on later. With one hand, they worked at construction, and with the other held a weapon. Every one of the builders had his sword girded at his side as he built. Identical situation today. Israel is in a dramatic war against terror. If you're working, you have your weapon. It's literally that bad, where you must work and defend and be ready to defend yourself at any moment throughout the day, night. People in Israel understand what this terrorism is against them, and they're fighting it just like they did back in Ezra and Nehemiah's day. What I also want to say, this plan that was exposed, literally this happened as well. On October 7th, it seems that there was a breakdown on the enemy front. Many people wondered, how was it that Hezbollah didn't attack at the same time? Well, there was some kind of breakdown. Because that didn't happen, that major plan was exposed, and Israel was saved from a much, much greater catastrophe on that day, October 7th. As horrible as it was, could have been so much worse had Israel's enemies come in from all fronts, including Hezbollah in the north. This would have been unbelievable. It would have been horrible. There's some that say that even if they had, they could have even been in Jerusalem. Thank God that that worst case scenario was prevented and Israel was made aware of the plot, and now Israel's fighting fiercely on the Hezbollah front. I have friends who on October 7th ran to the front line to stop Hezbollah from entering because Hezbollah was coming down and would have entered had it not been for the IDF to stop them quickly. All of that is identical to the old ancient thing that happened. This is my key in talking about all of this and going back historically to understand what's happening now. Today, as spiritually removed, as biblically illiterate, as godless as our society is, we must understand today that Israel's wars are like no other wars. And I'll back this up very just blatantly. Maybe you think it's all just old-time stuff. And maybe that was made-up history. Whatever. Who knows what anybody would say today. No, I want to quote, there's a few unnamed generals and teachers from the U.S. Military Academy of West Point that stated these three things. I'll quote here now. West Point is interested in understanding strategy and tactics, and the Six-Day War does not make any sense at all. All right, another one said, there is no way we can teach the reason behind Israel's success because Israel was clearly aided primarily by God, and we are not permitted to teach God at West Point. Another one said, the Six-Day War is not studied because at West Point they study strategy and tactics, not miracles. So once again, in modern time, we have Israel, a war that is completely not studied at America's military academies because it doesn't make any sense. I'm stating the fact that Israel still operates on the world stage in a different capacity than what the rest of the world works in. And right now, we must understand that Israel's war against radical Islam is much more spiritual, it's much more godly than what we can understand. Hamas is fighting it in a spiritual way. The West is not. Most of Israel understands the spiritual dynamic that's at play here, but I want you to understand that there's an incredibly spiritual dynamic that includes God, and it includes biblical understanding. It includes worship to God on the Temple Mount. It includes red heifers and sacrificial services that are totally out of your mind right now. Maybe you're like, oh, this is nuts. No, it's literally the ancient way that is being presented again in our modern times that's coming back, that this radical Islamic jihad hates. Now, I think we'll conclude with that. I think you understand the situation. I would like to say one last thing. To give a little hope. Because if God is really in this picture, which I believe he is, as horrible as things are right now, Israel has seen major deliverance in times past in the springtime during Passover. I think that it's time that we do build ourselves in hope and do trust in God for a great deliverance for Israel, just like in times past. You guys know Daniel in the lion's den. That happened at Passover. That's encouraging. He was delivered from the jaws of the lions right in Passover. The story of Purim in the book of Esther, that was during Passover. Maybe a little more unfamiliar story is the story of the Assyrians when they attacked Jerusalem way back in the day. And that was literally the night of Passover when they attacked. And the Jewish people of Jerusalem woke up the next morning and all the Assyrians were dead, surrounding the entire city. Again, these are all biblical stories. But again, from a biblical, spiritual point of view of which this Middle Eastern war is all about, we can gain a lot of hope and a lot of strength for continuing on and hoping in God and hoping for a quick end to this war through hope in God. I would just encourage you all. This is much different than any other war, and we need to be looking to God, and we'll pray that this war will be ended quickly. May it be quick, and may Israel receive a quick victory. Just let's look at this maybe a little bit different, and maybe we'll understand where the other side is coming from, and we can strengthen ourselves a little bit more in understanding how we can be strong in God, and we can encourage the nation of Israel to put their strength in God, and that this war would be over quick. Guys, that's all for now. Keep hanging in there. We know that Israel's going to win in the end. Don't forget to subscribe and get the conversation going down below. As always, tune out the fake news and tune into what's actually happening here, heartland of Israel. We'll be back every Monday through Friday with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.